Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalica and you're gonna be a super spicy person after watching this video. Problem neighbor feeding feral pigeons. Stink bombs. A tough response, but it worked. I live in a 10-story apartment building in a dense part of the city with numerous other tall complexes, but also a number of old single-family homes. One such home abuts my building, directly under my 8th floor apartment. The long-time owner has had a pigeon coop in his backyard for years. The birds smell and are a nuisance, but no big deal. Then, about 6 months ago, the owner took it upon himself to dump 20 pounds of birdseeds in his backyard daily, attracting 200 to 250 city pigeons. They're ferals that lived in a nearby park, but once the feeding started, they ended up hanging out at my neighbour's roof most of the day, every day. Complaints to him to desist were fruitless. Numerous neighbours also complained to city officials, but they were useless. Animal rights activists on our city council, who halted a pigeon control program a few years back as cruelty to animals are very pro-animal, they refused to take action under the pretext that there is no sort of nuisance law the city could use in this case. The smell from pigeon crap in his yard progressively got worse, and the birds started roosting on our property and crapping on parked cars. Several disgruntled neighbours, including me, pondered a solution for months. A neighbour and I arrived at a solution, artificially escalating the nuisance level of the problem, specifically the bird reek, so the city can no longer ignore the nuisance. It had to be logical, secretive, and collaborated. Someone couldn't throw dog poop onto his property and expect an outcome. Long story short, we concocted an odorous slurry. Using my 8th floor balcony directly over the pigeons' lover backyard, I gave it a gradually increasing midnight sprinkling of slurry, which disappeared into the grass in his messy backyard. Within 1 week, the increased odour emanating from his property reached half a block away. Suddenly, the problem was resolved. We didn't see the official action, but word was that several prominent businessmen who owned a restaurant down the street complained to the mayor about the stench. The city took action. The guy is now only allowed to keep about 15 pigeons in coops, no more feeding the ferals. An unorthodox solution to a problem that needed to be dealt with. I took the power back from the man who ruined my life. Disclaimer. First of all, some aspects of the story are potentially disturbing, so if you're sensitive, read at your own discretion. Sorry if my story is all over the place. I don't have the best organisational skills in writing. The years aren't exact, they're just a spacer. Also, the revenge isn't necessarily interesting and or funny, but I believe it still works. The beginning. From the beginning, Hank had been involved in my life, a family friend and a member of my parents' church. He worked in the nursery and watched over me. He always helped out with the children's programs in the church and even watched over me outside of the church. Since he was a friend of my father's, it didn't seem weird when he got me gifts, took me places, or gave me a little spending money. Also, he had a son my older brother's age, Jim, that my brother was friends with. Year 1. When I was in the 6th grade, I was around 10. My brother would hang out with Jim every Sunday after church, and I wanted to come too because I wanted to be like my brother. Obviously, they didn't want me around, so while they were ignoring me, I developed a friendship with Hank. We would play video games together in his basement for hours until my brother and I had to leave. I don't know when exactly it happened, but one day Hank was standing behind me watching me play when he ran his hands over my body. I was confused and didn't know what to do, but it didn't matter because just as quickly as it started, it was done. It was stupid, but I continued to come over and occasionally he would do it again. He started threatening me that if I told anyone, he would know, and he would kill me, and that I wasn't allowed to stop coming so my parents wouldn't wonder why. Although it didn't happen often, it was picking up, but he was also taking me more places. I didn't like being with him, and I did at the same time. Year 2. Around 7th grade, things picked up. Whenever I came over, he would touch me, and he would do it for longer each time. Even when he took me out and when we were at church, he would take me into the bathrooms. Around this time, even though I still wasn't sure what I was feeling, I started to resist his actions, and consequently, he started the physical abuse. He would hit me with whatever was around, books, computer keyboards, etc., and punch and kick me. Once, he stabbed me in the back with a syringe. Around this time, he started taking me to a pool. At the pool, he would touch me in the water and had me touch him in the shower and use my mouth. Year 2.5. The summer after my 7th grade year, my church went on a camping trip to a lake. My parents didn't really do that stuff, but Hank and Jim invited my brother and I to come with them. Since my brother was always with Jim, Hank had almost 24-hour access to me. During this trip, Hank was on me whenever he had the chance. Year 3. Around my 8th grade year is when the verbal, physical abuse started. Hank decided to take the route of constantly demeaning, degrading, and insulting me every chance he got. On top of his words, he started making me wear a leash, crawl around on all fours, and eat dog food, all while naked. He even had a collar made that said Hank's little bitch. Now, this whole time I'd been dealing with mental illnesses that were only worsened by what he was doing. That year, I started really cutting, and I tried killing myself multiple times, which landed me in the psychiatric hospital twice. After coming out of the hospital for overdosing, Hank took me to a movie and explained to me that he was going to stop. He said he really cared for me and didn't want me to end up dead. And he really did. I was free, but my mind was still conflicted and I was still scared of him, so I didn't tell anyone. I slowly did my best to go to church less and less. The aftermath. That wasn't the end of my hospital trips. Even without his abuse, I was mentally unstable. I kept cutting and attempting for years. It was bringing down my education and my relationships with my family and friends. Finally, when I was in 10th grade and in the hospital, I let it slip to a therapist that I had been abused, and she helped me tell my parents. Slowly, I was able to tell my parents a little of what happened, and eventually, who did it. The revenge. As soon as I said it was Hank, it started. First, I talked to a police officer, although I could barely say anything. Then I was brought to an establishment designed for kids to talk about what has happened to them. I talked to a woman and told her all about the abuse. Well, the sexual abuse. I was still scared and I couldn't bring myself to mention the physical or others. The case against Hank started and they started looking for the evidence. One day, I let it slip to my parents that other abuse happened, causing me to go back, and this time, I told them everything. They got their evidence and arrested Hank, but that didn't mean it was over. The worst of it was still coming. It was one thing to talk to one person who was trained to talk to me, but now I would have to testify at a pre-trial. I had to relive my experiences sitting across from Hank, and then I had to be interrogated by his lawyer. Luckily, I was stone-faced. I was able to talk to his lawyer without breaking down. I don't really remember exactly what was said, but Hank's lawyer wasn't the best, and some of my responses to his questions made the people in the court laugh a little. After that was the real thing. A trial with 12 strangers sitting there and listening to my pain. During the pre-trial, I was kind of quiet and scared, but I went into that courtroom the day of the trial and confidently told everyone what that bastard had done. The result. Guilty on 1 count of child abuse 3rd degree, 2 counts child abuse 2nd degree, 2 counts criminal sexual conduct 2nd degree, persons under 13, defendant 17 or older, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct 3rd degree, persons under 13, defendant 17 or older, 1 count of criminal sexual conduct 1st degree, person under 13, defendant 17 or older. The sentence, 25 to 40 years. The real revenge, though, is not letting him hold me down for the rest of my life. What an incredibly strong and brave person. I've looked through the comments, and thankfully OP has continued to get help and hasn't harmed themselves in a couple of years. I also learned that Hank is 61 and most likely will never leave prison. I hope he rots in there. I planted over 5,000 dandelion weeds in my neighbour's garden. Here's some backstory. I have a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel named Charlie, and he likes to poop. I let him out in my front garden every morning for his toilet routine, same in the evening. We don't have a boundary fence on where my garden and my neighbour's starts besides a row of bushes. Saying this, Charlie hasn't ever crossed or pooped past these bushes. Now, every week I collect up said poop before it gets to a disturbing amount. I've been doing this for the past 4 years to keep my front garden looking good and not smelly. One day, I come home from work to find that my neighbours weren't happy that there was dog poop in my front garden. I instantly went to collect up what was there. There wasn't much, and it was nowhere near the boundary of where our gardens met. Fast forward a week, my neighbour again complained about the dog poop being in my garden, however this time threatened to hurt my dog if he continued to poop in my garden. This time I wasn't so nice about it, and stated that it's my garden and my dog can do as he pleases. Now, I know dog poop can be annoying, but when it's not in your garden and there's no smell due to the decent airflow and open front garden, is it really justified to threatening a man's dog over some poop? Anyway, after months of this going on with petty things and shade being thrown at me every day about having a dog, I decided to declare war on my neighbours. Now, I knew these people pretty well. They just moved in and we let them use our Wi-Fi for a couple of months until they got theirs sorted. I picked up a few things about them, and one of them was how OCD they were. They cut their back garden every week and painted the entire bottom layer of the house to match their fence. This was all the fuel I needed to exact my revenge. My first step was to start off small. I knew they liked things to match, so I painted my fence gate bright pink instead of matching it with my fence. This was my first small victory. They hated it so much they begged me to correct the colour. So I did. I figured if peace was an option, it was worthwhile. Then began the hate again. I had to come up with something so evil and yet genius that couldn't be traced back to me. This is when I planted over 5,000 dandelion seeds in their front and back garden. I figured I was in this for the long game. I did this under the cover of night and made sure to plant them in places not easily mowed. Fast forward 3 months and their garden was covered in weeds. They grew through all the slabbing and were patched all over the garden. It took them over 3 days to clear the weeds and around £100 of weed killer. Long story short, a-hole neighbours threatened to hurt my doggo. I planted 5,000 weeds in their garden. I'm sure the neighbours knew fine rightly who did it, but you can't really prove something like that. Maybe a giant gust of wind just happened to knock all those seeds into their garden. I would also not be complaining to a neighbour who let me use their Wi-Fi free for months. People are crazy. Okay, so that's all for r/ProRevenge. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!